3 guys at the same time. Make you boys a little nervous?
Oh my.
Not oh my. Oh Zio. Welcome back to Ozio, where I compare episodes of the Sentai series Ohranger to its American counterpart Power Rangers Zio to see who did it best. I'm Mr. Fusion, your favorite femme gremlin, albeit in keep myself warm hoodie mode, and I have 2 matchups for you today. One of them jumps us ahead to episode 22 of Power Rangers Zio, nearly the middle of the series, before we come back to episode 12. I mean, episode 22 is so far ahead, they've already started speedrunning the intro, which I hate. Beginning with Trust in Me and My Friend Rest in Passion, we find one of those sympathetic monster stories, at least over in Ohranger. You know what I'm talking about. It's where the monster isn't such a bad guy after all, but the monster still has to die horribly. Sentai episodes seem to love to do this, and I like how it throws a wrench into the formula and tugs at the heartstrings. Power Rangers, at least at this point in its history, tends to get a little squeamish. We saw this happen in Mighty Morphin Zyurangers, where the mother monster guarding her eggs was changed into an evil Peter Lorre type. I wonder if they'll do any better this time. They won't. They really won't. This episode is terrible. I'm just telling you right now. So if you watch Trust in Me, especially as a big-brained adult person, you might notice a few things that don't seem to add up. It opens with King Mondo complaining about how his machines are wasted by the Power Rangers. Clank has an idea to reuse destroyed parts to create a new monster. Well, that is to say that the monster will kinda just make itself, and they won't do anything at all. And they will use this reanimated zombie abomination to trick the Rangers into trusting him? I mean, that's a fine plan, but what does that have to do with making a salvage monster? Where's the theming? Where's the connection? Where's the mastodon? Oh wait, there it is in the trash pile. So King Mondo coaches Defector on how to suck up to the Power Rangers, and then Defector falls to Earth? We don't usually see monsters do that. That's weird. None of this stuff really adds up, and that immediately makes sense when you realize that Power Rangers wrote some stuff and threw it on top of this completely unrelated footage. I always say that Power Rangers doesn't have to perfectly adapt the Sentai plots to be good, but it sure makes it easier to make sense when it does. Yeah, so it turns out everything that happens in this footage is pretty much the exact opposite of what Power Rangers says it is. Bacchushund isn't lamenting the wrecked robots, he's cursing imperfections and tossing them into the trash. Bara Revenger isn't part of a Baranoia plot. The vengeful rejects, alone and moaning in the trash heap, come together to create a sentient personification of their anger. Bacchushund isn't coaching Bara Revenger. Bara Revenger is confronting Bacchushund to get his revenge. I would have loved it if Power Rangers kept the resulting fight, which is actually pretty intense, and paired it with dialogue equally ill-fitting and ludicrous. I really love this new workout program you came up with. No problem, thanks for getting the kinks out of my back. And yeah, as you've probably figured out by now, Bara Revenger doesn't fall to Earth because Baranoia couldn't afford a taxi. He falls to Earth because he loses the fight and gets knocked out of the palace. Why did they even keep this shot? This creates a weird premise where you can't believe your lying eyes. One episode is about a monster that teams up with one of the Ohrangers because they both consider Baranoia their enemy. The other is about a monster who is pretending to do all of those things. And you know, I was joking about the fight scene that Power Rangers cuts out, but there is a fight scene between the two machines at the end of the episode that Power Rangers keeps, and they pretty much do exactly what I made fun of, so that this is now a fake fight.
I'll show you defiance, you fool!
This is terrible, but it's kinda hilarious just how transparently terrible it is. About the only thing these episodes have in common is that they both center the blue-colored hero. For Yuji, it makes perfect sense because, while skeptical at first that Revenger isn't working for Baranoia, he becomes convinced when Revenger saves Yuji's pet dog and then refuses to attack a bunch of humans even when they reenact the origin of RoboCop on him. The two characters bond over the course of the episode. For Rocky, it makes perfect sense because, while skeptical at first that Defector isn't working for the Machine Empire, Rocky has been getting to know a blind martial artist. Okay, does the guest star, Penny, ever interact with the monster? No? Does Rocky ever spend time with the monster? No. Okay, well, Defector still saves the dog. That happens at least. Is it Rocky's dog? No, of course not. It's just, we have the footage. Okay, so Power Rangers has a plot about a monster pretending to defect. It also has a plot about Rocky making friends with a blind person. Those plots have nothing to do with each other, not in the slightest possible way. But for some reason, this makes Rocky the main character, I guess. I think Power Rangers could do a good story teaching kids about living with a disability. It just doesn't fit here. I mean, remember the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers episode with the girl who can't hear, and she saves the day because she can't hear the monster's accordion music? I'm not saying that the only justification to see a person with a disability in fiction is if their disability happens to be useful. I'm just saying these are two separate stories that don't fit together. And even on its own, the Penny Rocky story doesn't work all that well. Penny is a skilled martial artist. Penny is also fiercely independent and bristles at any attempt made to help her because she's blind.
Where'd you learn how to do all that?
You mean because I'm blind?
We enjoy watching. Whoa, we got that.
I don't need your help.
Kat suggests to Rocky not to act like he feels sorry for her. Rocky approaches her again, doesn't really treat her any differently than he did before, but for some reason she attaches herself to him for the rest of the episode. Not only that, Rocky constantly grabs onto her, guides her, places her on benches, and she suddenly has no problem with any of this. How did this character go from stubbornly refusing any help to having no agency at all? Potentially, the most interesting thing about Penny is in how she recognizes Rocky's voice while he's a Power Ranger without seeing him to realize that he's transformed as a Power Ranger. That, and her ability to recognize Bulk and Skull in every disguise they don this episode, raises some interesting implications. It could have taken the story in some entertaining directions, except that this is a story about a monster who is defecting, except not really because we rewrote that. So Penny's only connection to the main story is when the monster runs away for no reason. Penny gets to point and say, "He went that-a-way." Whew. Glad we have this character on the scene. It's not as if Power Rangers doesn't have any kind of unifying thought.
Hey, you trust me, don't you?
It's right there in the title. Defector wants the Power Rangers' trust. Rocky screws up by trusting him. Or at least that's what's supposed to happen, but we'll get to that in a minute. Even the Bulk and Skull comedy plot ties into this, as they don various disguises to fool Lieutenant Stone. For some reason, the Rocky and Penny plot is the only one where trust and deception don't come into play at all. For example, Penny never learns that her independence doesn't preclude her from trusting others. Conversely, Rocky isn't in a situation where he has to learn to trust Penny's other senses in a way he might have been skeptical about. Heck, since the episode shows Penny uncovering Bulk and Skull's disguises, why can't she be the one to read that Defector's defection is a dastardly deception? It's such a lamentable lacking of logical literature. What? Alright now, let's get to the ending. After the episode devotes its runtime to Rocky and Penny, it now has to pivot to the idea of Rocky screwing over his teammates by trusting Defector. The problem is that never happens. It looks like Power Rangers at least had pieces of the monster costume, but Rocky and Defector never actually have any original scenes together, which is already a problem. But they could have written it so that Rocky goes rogue and comes to Defector's aid despite the rest of his team being against it. In fact, there's an episode later on where Rocky does something similar. But no. The only reason Rocky is at this location that looks absolutely nothing like the quarry he's looking down into is because Zordon specifically sent him there alone to follow up on Defector's story.
I have already dispatched Rocky to investigate.
Okay, he ends up being incorrect, but he's doing exactly what he was supposed to do. The Power Rangers fight the bad guys, like they always do. Nothing out of the ordinary happens here.
I never should have trusted you!
Yeah, I'm really busted up about this 5-second relationship falling apart.
I got us into this mess.
No, you didn't! There is no mess! So the show gives Rocky the kill, but it falls completely flat because there was never a conflict here. The only notable element is that, whoa, Rocky gets to use the hamster wheel! If you're 6, maybe that's enough to satisfy you, and sure, this is a show for little kids. But if that's all that kids want or need, why does the Sentai version actually try? Over in Ohranger, Bacchus Hund is obsessed with killing Bara Revenger, not because he's actually accomplishing anything, but because his defective existence is an affront to the perfection of Baranoia. Acha, however, has a plan to humiliate Revenger even more and puts a thingy on his head to control him with the remote. So the monster doesn't fight the heroes because it turns out he was bad all along. He doesn't have a choice. Because of the time they spent together, Yuji recognizes that Revenger would rather die than be used this way, and so resolves to defend Revenger's honor by killing him, even going so far as to insist on piloting the giant roller himself. See? That's a story! Even so, it falls into that same trap I talked about in the Zyuranger episode, where it still feels like the need for the requisite action beats override the need for catharsis, and so it comes across more cool than tragic. As bad as the Power Rangers version is, it's telling how seamlessly they can recontextualize this into a straight action sequence without it coming across even slightly jarring. What I must give Ohranger credit for is their restraint in allowing the wheel to actually end the conflict. I know I complain about it a lot, but forcing a giant robot fight into this one in particular would have completely gutted the emotional resonance, and I'm so glad they had the sense to realize that Yuji finishing this solo is the ending. However, the writers seem so intent on the inevitability of the tragic ending that they kinda rush getting there. I mean, guys, you saw Acha put the thing on his head. Do you even want to try to remove it? I mean, you're standing right there in front of him. We could avoid all this pain. Just snatch it. No, we have a tragic ending to get to. Kill him! Kill him for the tears! And Ohranger definitely goes for the tears in its final scene. Revenger decides to die in a junkyard, as he was born from one. The dog follows him. Revenger gets to pet him one last time, until his fingers literally fall off as he dies. Then his entire body falls apart, and we finish on a shot of the oblivious dog surrounded by the pieces of his dead friend. The end! Holy crap! But I'm sure Power Rangers manages to pull off an equally moving final beat for their version.
Here it comes.
Oh, good lord, let's just score these. For story, it's Ohranger, definitely one of the more memorable episodes from this show. For characters, Bara Revenger is a great tragic character. Even Yuji feels like more than just a blank piece of cardboard. While anybody probably could have been slotted here, the episode pulls off Yuji feeling like the idealistic younger brother of the group. Ohranger wins. And for action, while both versions are largely the same, these episodes show just how much context matters in making those fights feel meaningful or like nothing at all. Ohranger wins. It's not even close with this one. Next up, the monster is piano-based. It attacks with music. Power Ranger Zeo ties that to Adam discovering Skull's talent as a pianist and convincing him to let his light shine rather than hiding it away. Makes sense? I see the connection. Ohranger ties it to a time-traveling kid with a magic space pendant who eats goop. Okay, I think the show's swapped brains this time. I said a few minutes ago that it makes it easier on Power Rangers when they just go with the flow and adapt the Sentai story. But what happens when the Sentai story doesn't make any sense? It's Instrument of Destruction.
Instrument of Destruction.
Nice title drop. Versus Naughty, the future child. I have to hand it to the Ohranger episode. There is a lot of creativity on display, but that creativity doesn't have a lot of focus to it. Oh, here's a piano monster! Cool, is he called Bara Piano? No, even better, he's called Bara Devil. Why? What does that have to do with pianos? Nothing! It's because he creates virtual reality worlds of natural disasters. Okay, what does virtual reality have to do with the devil? Oh, and when he plays music, he opens up a time portal to the year 2200. He does? Absolutely! Yeah, and a kid pops out because his amulet resonates with the music to make the time portals. Now, the bad guys want the amulet. So what about the virtual reality? Oh, that's gone. It doesn't matter? It never did! Is the monster still a devil? I guess. What about the music? Oh, that's still there. It is? Yeah, banging on the keyboard reopens the time portals. But how does Shohei know what song to play, and how can he do that so precisely with giant robot hands? Wouldn't he just accidentally end up sending the future kid back to ancient Rome or something? Oh, I almost forgot! The Ohrangers have identical caveman ancestors! What? So it's somewhat understandable that the Power Rangers writers, lowercase Charlotte and Buzz Aldrin? Oh no, Buzz Alden. It's understandable why Charlotte and Buzz decided to utilize Jason Narvi's real-life piano playing skills and tie it to a piano-based monster. Hi, future me here. Given that I frequently find myself having to talk about the proliferation of unsourced common knowledge surrounding Power Rangers, it occurred to me that I might be falling into that trap myself. While a simple search will bring up countless assertions that Jason Narvi is in fact a classically trained pianist, not a single one I've seen cites a source. And I didn't want to just say that, so throughout the week after this went on Patreon, I read and listened to countless interviews and Q&As with Jason Narvi. I've learned more about him in the past week than I ever knew in my life. He's a fascinating guy with skills and interests in many areas, but I could not find a single instance of him mentioning he plays piano, and I found several anecdotes that seemed to suggest the opposite. Even the couple of times this episode came up, he never mentioned he was playing, and I happen to think if the lead actor is skilled enough to actually play Chopin's revolutionary etude, that would be the first bit of trivia that would come up. At any rate, my findings are inconclusive. I don't have any more time to devote to this. If you know anything better, please tell me. I'm inclined to believe it's not him, but if it's not, he does some pretty decent finger syncing in those moments where we can actually see his fingers. Moving on! This concept is wacky in its own way. It's bizarre that Skull would run around in a black cloak to hide his identity, and that he conveniently leaves notes that give clues to where he is. But it's all done in service to telling an actual story about well-established characters. Especially by this point, Bulk and Skull are an asset to long-form storytelling. They've developed over time, and given how long the show has written them as cops, it's kinda wild to see them back in their punk attire as students. At its heart, this is a really simple but emotionally resonant idea. Skull has a talent, but is afraid that it will cause him to be laughed at, especially by his best friend. It's sweet, and Adam is a good character for this, excitable enough to follow the trail of this mystery, and sensitive enough to encourage Skull to be his best self. I love that when Skull comes out to perform, people in the audience start to titter because it's him, and Adam very pointedly gets them to start applauding instead. He's a good egg. The piano playing is not simply thematically linked to the villain, it's connected to the villain plot, too, which sees King Mondo wanting to get Queen Machina a piano player for her birthday. That's why they're going after Skull. It all ties together really well into a sweet, sentimental episode with relatively low stakes. If anything suffers, it's Fortissimoto himself, who doesn't really get to do all that much in this adaptation besides spout music puns.
Only for a measure or two. You in what orchestra? Now I truly am a grand piano!
But since giving him more to do would mean having to deal with all of this, and this, and this, I understand the bind they were in. Everything Power Rangers adds more than makes up for it. It just leaves the monster plot feeling a bit obligatory, like, yeah, okay, we killed him, now let's get back to the actual story. Please don't interrupt me again. From a technical and filmmaking standpoint, both episodes are fairly impressive. Angel Grove High School is usually just this one hallway, which is very clearly a set. For some reason, a lot of scenes in this episode are shot in a real school. I've heard it's the same school used for the exteriors, but I don't know if I can confirm that. Wherever it is, if I had to guess why they did this, it would be because of the access to a piano and other instruments. However, they don't seem to have an issue getting a piano into the juice bar set, so I don't know why they couldn't have put one in the classroom. Or does the classroom no longer exist now that this season built that study hall area? I don't remember. Whatever the reason, the location shooting makes the show feel a little less cheap, a little more real. I love how this allows for shots of Adam looking out windows and seeing Cogs sneaking around the actual outdoors. It is a bit jarring when characters run out of one scene in the real school and into another scene on the regular set, because they don't look anything alike. But I really like it and wish they'd shot here more often. They do use the regular set for a fun cog fight that's scored with Skull's piano playing rather than the usual rock guitars. It features dancing and even some surfing. Over on the Ohranger side, there's some fun use of rear projection to put Shohei into all these virtual hellscapes. There are the usual perspective tricks to make it look like Bara Devil is picking up Shohei in his hand. But what really impressed me about this episode is this long stretch of the other four Ohrangers fighting, which is done with the camera progressing from character to character in one continuous take. Sadly, Power Rangers cuts this up, which makes it far less impressive. I know I'm cutting it up too, but that's because I don't want to get hit for copyright infringement. You just have to take my word for it that this looks really cool when played in sequence. Finally, both shows, by virtue of using the same footage, avoid falling victim to the giant robot fight feeling tacked on. It doesn't have that annoying thing where the monster is defeated in a coherent, thematic, and logical fashion, only for it to just keep going for no reason. The villains are failing at their goal, getting the pendant or getting the piano player, and size the villain up out of sheer annoyance. That works! And to mix things up, the heroes use the individual robots for once, and even bring out the wheel to knock the giant monster in the shins. That's kinda funny. Still, Power Rangers cuts out Ohranger's Grand Taurus, hitting Bara Devil in the Bara Balls. Can't win them all. But someone has to win this. It's time to score them. For story, while I am impressed with Ohranger's sheer chutzpah to throw in a random kid with his random future food paste, sometimes you just have to keep the old adage of KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. It's hard to keep track of all the weird random ideas in Ohranger, let alone care about them, but we do care about Skull and his self-doubt. Power Rangers wins. And that might give away characters too. Future Boy June's friend Mikio is going to stick around, but there isn't all that much going on here. Shohei is the primary focus, but only because he happened to be in proximity. Power Rangers makes good use of both Adam and Skull, and in ways that fit their characters. Power Rangers wins. And for action, they're both really good. Ohranger has that impressive fight sequence that Power Rangers unfortunately butchers, but Power Rangers makes up for it with its original fights and Adam's flipping instamorph. I'll give it a tie, but that still means that Power Rangers Zeo scores the victory. I should have mentioned this sooner. It's not directly relevant to this video series, but I'm just checking in, just sharing. Several months ago, I decided to watch Power Rangers RPM for the first time. I'm not the biggest Power Rangers watcher, but I have followed Linkara's history of Power Rangers for over 15 years now, and his videos on RPM always made it seem like a show I'd enjoy. And I really did. I haven't seen Ohranger, but from what I understand, this is definitely an example where the Power Rangers show does really well despite playing against its source material. But it has the same issue the episode we just finished does. Nearly every time it would cut back to Sentai footage, it always felt obligatory, and because of that, less interesting than the original story it was trying to tell. It's like, okay, I get it, we have to show the robots, but can we hurry up and get back to the good stuff about the post-apocalyptic world and the well-developed characters? Yeah, I know, I'm never beating the allegations that I hate action, but that's not it. They just don't mesh well in this case, and that's the one failure in an otherwise really good show. I hope you enjoyed that random mini review. I'll see you next time.